in this systemic view based on the series AnotherSelf, Ronél and Sonja just take a look at the different characters and their journey from the difficulties they were facing in life, going through what we call a family constellation, what happens after, and how their life shapes from there forward into where they are now. So this is just a journey on each character, so it's easy to understand the series on AnotherSelf. I hope you enjoy this. Thank you. All right, here we are again, and this time we're going to talk about Ada. So Ada is the main character in this series. She is the one who's the most skeptic. She asks all the questions, but we also see the biggest part of the storyline evolving around her. So Ada's story is really about her difficulties she has as a doctor with her hand that is shaking, and that costs her job at one stage. But she's also a very conscientious doctor, and she really loves research. She's really the most analytical here, and she is the one who says, this is all hogwash, this is all doesn't make sense. Yet she's willing to do the most research. She is actually reading a book that is about this work so she can get more information. So she likes to know why, what happens. And there is this mystery in this work that she can't put her head around. So that's really where we see a lot of debate happening in this series. What's your take on Ada?
She's definitely the most analytical of the three girls, which keeps her a lot in her head. And because she does this important work to try and save, every cancer patient, because she couldn't save her dad, she tends to analyze everything. And when you go into your analytical side of your brain, you tend to cut off any healing or your emotions, your own emotions. So she doesn't like to connect with her own emotions. She puts up a front that she's very strong, and she uses her degree to verify everything, and she questions this new healing that Sefki goes through. She hides a lot of her own pain. She can't seem to connect her heart even in a relationship with her husband, because she rather chooses her job over her husband's needs. And that's where the big problem comes in, and stuff starts happening. She goes on this journey with Sevgi, sees the healing in Sevgi, questions the healing, agrees to go to one of the Zaman's expansions, only to make an agreement that Sevgi will go for more tests after this healing. And that's the only way she could end up in the field, because she was not interested. It's not for her. She then walks into this expansion and bumps into her first love for the second time.
But she needs to fix everything. Everything needs to be logical for her. Yes. She agrees that if Sefki is looking better, she agrees that there must be something. And she is curious on that. And she and Zaman have this love-hate relationship. And Zaman is the one who says to her, what's happening with your hand? And she is quite annoyed that he actually picks up on it.
Yeah.
And but she hasn't got an answer for the shaking in her hand. So she now reluctantly goes and sets up an expansion, or what we call a constellation. And very soon we see a story that's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. How did you see that story? What is it that you took on from that story?
If they have in the beginning, they show you the incident of the rebellious people that come around and they violate the aunt. The father has to make this decision of killing his own daughter because the society that they lived in at that time, or the time period they lived in, would not accept her, if because she also, they think that she betrayed them with the rebellions. She was in love with one of the guys. He then shoots her in a poppy field. And Ada's grandmother is a witness to this. And this trauma is downloaded into her. And within this is the heartbreaking event where the father has to actually murder or kill his own daughter for her own safety, because the villagers were going to do something different to her. So he actually took away her pain, because this is what decision that he made. Ada does not put two and two together, because it comes up in the field and somebody mentions poppies. And she has a quick remembrance that she always has this bad dream about this poppy field. And she doesn't like quite think, this is like really suspicious. And Zaman does ask her if somebody was murdered in her family, but her and her mother don't speak, because they've got a tiff going on because of her dad. And she does not know the family's history that well, because she did not want to speak to her mother.
Is something that could have been spoken of before, but the mother never gives her the story. But in the mother's home, we do see the picture where the aunt is in the picture, but
Yes.
it's never discussed. So
Yeah.
for Ada, she doesn't know that story. And so she's convinced that this is now, you know what, you guys make up a whole lot of hogwash.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he doesn't actually believe this. So
Yeah.
we do see the picture in her mom's house, but it is not spoken about.
Not spoken about, yes. So it was a secret. It was because the mother does say at one stage, nobody ever spoke about this. And in the field, there is the healing sentences of the father then talking to the daughter that he murdered, and that there's a healing there that happens in the field. But Ada still doesn't believe in this, and she's like, okay, whatever. And he gives her homework, and he says, go phone your mother and ask her if somebody was murdered in your family. And she's very reluctant because she doesn't want to speak to her mother. And Sigvi convinces her to phone her mother and talk to her mother, and which she duly does. The mother gets a shock because she doesn't want to say anything. And then she says, you see, I told you, nothing like that happened. And in the restaurant, Toprak pops up again, which is the first love. And the mother phones her back. And when the mother phones her back, she says, I did not want to talk about this, but yes, this story is true. Ada goes totally a little bit off the deep end, gets drunk, and ends up with Toprak. Why? Because now she's in a bit of a shock, because this work in the field is real. This is real, and she doesn't understand how this all came about. So for her, the initial thought of, oh, this is nonsense, now is hitting home runs, and she doesn't know how to deal with it.
Okay. So I want us to stay with Ada and her mother's relationship, because this is a really interesting relationship that we see going on, and seeing that we're talking about what happened in the mother's family line.
Yeah.
So obviously this is news to her, but at the same time, the mother uses this opportunity to want to connect with Ada. Muku invites her, and she comes and visits Ada. And Ada is like mad. She doesn't want to see her mother. I think everything is like compounded for her a little bit. And the mother actually doesn't want to visit because of Ada having found out this information that happened in her family. Ada's mom, Elgin, wants to actually tell Ada something herself, but she doesn't get the opportunity because Ada gives her the cold shoulder. So what we see here is the mother-daughter relationship that is really, really soured. And then we also see a little bit further on that the mother's relationship with her own mother is not a good relationship. So, and we don't quite understand why that is not a good relationship. So there is this difficulty between mothers and daughters. And then we also know that it's the great aunt, I believe. So the grandmother's, so Ada's grandmother's mother is the sister who actually witnessed her sister getting shot by the father. And so that massive trauma makes it so that she is so stuck in the trauma, and we have this disconnection between mothers and daughters going forward. But there's also then the disconnection of not trusting men. And so you have this, what we see is Ada's grandmother is a single mother and makes her living as a seamstress.
Yeah.
Ada's mother also ends up sort of being a single mother. And but we get a little bit more of a glimpse there because Ada's mother and father were very, very, very much in love. But the grandmother is like also angry. Don't you dare marry this man. I've given up my life. You're supposed to study. You're supposed to you're supposed to be somebody bigger. I'm raising you to be bigger than that. And she's not happy about this marriage. And then we also see this marriage going a little bit south because he does have another woman somewhere. But we'll get into his side of the father a little bit later. I want to, at this point, stay with the mother. So what is your perception of Ada's mother?
Ada's mother is very cold and distant. She's very, because the mother didn't accept the man that she loved, she started resenting her own daughter, the grandmother as well. The grandmother resented the daughter because she wanted to get married and live her own life, but she thought she made her feel guilty and she owed her life, basically. She ended up having a child, which is Ada. The grandmother poured all her love into Ada and would embarrass the mother and take over the role of the mother to Ada, encouraging her to be a doctor and pushing this down on her. You have to be successful. You have to be doing this. Coming down on the mother all the time, saying what a bad husband the husband was, and that he was no good. She would talk like that in front of Ada. So Ada already distrusted men at that stage because the grandmother was imprinting this into her all the time when the mother used to come home, and that. So the mother relationship between mother and daughter with Ada and the mother were already damaged when the grandmother was involved because her pain was pushed down onto Ada as well.
Okay, then we have the scene with the doll. Ada is in the class, the boys are tearing the doll apart, and yet the mother punishes her. Yes. So she is firmly of the belief that her mother doesn't love her.
Yes.
And so she's very disappointed with the mother. And her anger with the mother really comes up when the mother leaves the father at the time that he is in desperate need of nursing, and the mother just walks away and walks out. And that Ada has no understanding of any of this. She has no clue as to why her mother acts in the way she does. So when the mother then visits her at Muka and Sefke's place, she's not interested to hear the mother's side of the story.
She rejects the mother's visit. The mother leaves. And then obviously they carry on with their stuff on the island. And then the fight is between her and the husband. And he's trying to get her back because he revealed to her that he had an affair. Her whole life was going perfect until she ended up in this expansion. And then everything just falls apart. She loses her job. She loses her husband, and she ends up with the girls in this place, and they try and help her. And it gets to the point where they call her and said to her mother's in hospital, and that she needs to go through. And in the hospital, she goes home after to meet Zaman, and he does another expansion with her with little figurines to then help her not to. She thinks she's going to rescue her mother, and he said, "No, you can't do anything for her. She's leaving. You need to help yourself here." They do the expansion, and only after the mother dies does she go to clean up the house. Then she finds the suitcase with all this stuff in, and then she only finds out that the mother had kept the secret that the father had another family somewhere else, and that's why the mother was not invested in the father.
Okay, but there is the other sad part that I would like to pay a little bit of attention to is, so Ada finds out her mother is in hospital, but she now wants her mother to live. She now wants her mother, the mother to, share with her, because she's horrified that the mother never told her that she was sick for the whole year.
Yes.
So she's quite horrified about that. And because she's a fixer, she now wants to fix and get the mother back to health, because that's what she does. That's her job as a doctor.
Yeah.
And she gets the news that there's not very much she can do. So now she's desperate. And now she calls on Zaman because she now wants this miracle cure for her mother.
Mm.
And Zaman comes to the house and he does a expansion for her, and he basically asks her to set up herself, her mother, her grandmother, and in that expansion she discovers, or the way the expansion works is that she is actually the one who cannot move. And he says there is something more here that you need to look at, and that has to do with your father. But now we talk about you and your mother, and he does the constellation in such a way that she can find peace with herself, her mother, the mother and the grandmother, and going to the great grandmother and even the aunt. So this is not an constellation that is a miracle cure. This is a constellation that serves to help Ada find peace with her mother, so that she can understand her mother's pain that she had as a mother, that she had as a daughter, and that the needs of the child, the daughter to the mother, were not met in generations before Ada. And so then Ada makes peace with this, and she goes to the hospital and she sits by the mother until the mother passes. But she's peaceful about it. She's peaceful about it. She understands her mother for possibly the very first time. She understands the mother. And
Yes.
she doesn't understand her fully, but she understands that there is something that is difficult for the mother, which is why the mother sort of kept the distance to her.
Yes, and what was beautiful in the scene where he does the expansion, it shows you that when they move through to the other side, and the healing happens, even on this side, the healing happens on the other side as well. And it shows you how happy they actually are to welcome the mother, you know, going over and crossing over, and that everybody was happy on the other side and looking at Ada, being grateful for her doing the work, because it definitely healed it heals not just the living, it heals the the dead as well, so that they can move on and live, be in peace, be at peace. And you can see how the mother dies in peace as well. That was a very emotional scene for me. I just I I cry every time I watch it.
Mothers and daughters have special relationships.
Yes.
And when those relationships are difficult because of some trauma that happens in the past, we don't understand. My mother doesn't love me. We make those, we create those belief systems, and then they get confirmed again and again and again. So she then also believes the mother didn't love the father. And so
Yeah.
she's very angry with the mother for not loving the father and actually abandoning the father in the time of need when he is dying of cancer. And the father says, no, you can't be angry with your mother. You know, she has her reasons. So don't be angry with her mother. And he pleads with her not to look at the mother unkindly. But his pleading falls on deaf ears. And even at his funeral, she's very angry with the mother. So after the mother's death, she clears up the mother's home and she discovers the father's suitcase. So I think we spoke about the mother's trauma in the mother's family line, but here we introduced to the trauma in the father's family line. So we see she picks up this suitcase, and this suitcase is the suitcase of the grandfather who was given the suitcase. And in that suitcase, there's also this horseshoe in it. But share with us what actually happened in how did this suitcase and this horseshoe come to pass that she now finds in her father's belongings?
So it's passed on from the great grandfather, or it was the grandfather. So the grandfather was very sick as a child, and he gets taken away from the parents. In those days, they were living in tents. There wasn't hospitals or any amenities around. So the doctor takes the child away to get better. And then the father could only give the son a horseshoe for him to feel close to home. But he ends up being raised by the doctor and his family. And there's the case of separation from the family, which repeats in his lifetime too, because he's separated from his wife, or the love of his life, and his daughter, and he ends up having a family with somebody else because of the separation. So that pattern just keeps repeating itself throughout the family line. And that suitcase contains the photo of the other family, the horseshoe, and everything then comes together for Ada, and these huge epiphanies happen, and she reevaluates her whole life as well. But yes, there's the pattern coming through the grandfather. of being separated from his family, just like he was separated from his family.
I want to go and relive that moment. Imagine. So they were a nomadic family. The father earned his money being a farrier, a farrier. So, and this child is very sick. The mother, you can see, is like, no, don't take my child away. And the father says, well, if he comes with us, he's not going to make it. So can you imagine the heartbreaking decisions that parents have to make? We rather give the child up for a better life than risk losing him while we stay together as a family. So it's a very difficult situation. And so this continues. He loses the child grows up now with what we would call a foster family today, but he loses the anchor to his birth family. And so then when you lose your anchor, it's difficult then to not go searching for your parents, and the search is then possibly in creating a separate family, which is probably, we don't know this, but I have a suspicion that this is what happened to the grandmother as well, because she's a single mother. So there is this, the pattern is the men leave and create a new family, and then there is a separation, and the pattern then is so Ada now has the proof that her father did it at the same time as her own husband creates a new family at the same time. So this is a pattern in the family that keeps repeating, and this is really scary looking at it. Why is this a pattern repeating? But what it does do for Ada is the realization that in order to understand her father, she also needs to understand her husband. She's very angry with him for having betrayed her yet again. And then we will actually, because it happens to her twice. It happens to her with her first love, Toprak, who, while she is pregnant, creates a new family with another woman. Her husband does it, and she just realizes this is what happens for her. But it gives her the strength to dissolve the relationship and the marriage with her husband in a really good way, and allows him to move forward with the other family, but also realizing that she wasn't quite there for him. She didn't want another child, and she didn't really want a child with him because of her situation with Toprak. So she had a child with Toprak, the child that she aborted. So we can see that she herself was put into difficult situations, and what she gave up for the men in her life so that they could have their families. So this is a little bit where this whole thing becomes a little bit muddied in that sense of that pattern that continues. So I want to end this section here with Ada and her family patterns and the love from a parent to a child that continues. And even if we don't understand our parents, we can't judge them. They had lives before us. We can't judge them. And she comes to this realization that her parents did love one another, which is why she does have life. But her judgment of her parents is unfair. And that really brings a big turnaround in her life. So I want to end this here, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, for me as well, if you judge your parents out of personal experience, you'll be put in the same position because those patterns just repeat themselves.
Absolutely.